would you be willing to expand any more on the emotional side of that? Because for me personally, that has been a specific struggle in my life. The separation between the face of duty and responsibility that comes on when you're in a professional role, and the inner turmoils that might be broiling, that might have been effectively cooking you in your own juices for years. Mm-hmm. Would you be willing to talk about that, that sort of jump to be able to express and release and be a complete person through this connection?
Thank you for sharing that, and I can feel you. I have been going through exactly the same. The point is, and I'm really sharing you the whole story of it. You know, when your mother dies when you're 15, you're taking over responsibilities, and nobody's asking you if you want that.
Yeah,
it has to be done. And if you are raised with a father who's already very sick from a heart and body perspective, you take care of him, and you're just doing it because it's necessary. What it has taught me is to manage situations, to take care of a family, and also, you know, resilience. You know, I'm the one who needs to be standing. I'm the one who needs to be standing, and it doesn't matter how hard the thunder gets. I'm not going down, because if I go down, my whole family will go down.
Yeah.
And this is what it has taught me. And I have really struggled when I started in my professional career, because the same thing happened to me again and again and again. I was the last one standing. You know, I was the one taking care of the family, and everybody was, you know, giving me some kind of rewards and recognition for that. But I still struggled in my inner self, you know. But you know what? I didn't want that to do. You know, I didn't want that. You know, I did it because it had to be done. And you know, dancing, in the end of the day, told me, because I had a different floor, and I realized on that floor, you know, I hate to confess it, but actually it is me. It's not just a role that was kind of pushed over my head. And I had a very wise man, you know, telling me, you know, our mothers made us the warriors we are. And this is what I feel today, you know, that the whole situation with my mother, and she was kind of the caretaker for my family, I have been taking over this role. And this is what I do on the dance floor when I work with my students. I'm taking care of them. I'm taking care of them making their career. And this is what I do in my day-to-day when I'm working as a CDO. I'm building families. I'm rebuilding families, and I'm trying to do this with the sound of music, with the sound of making it an experience. And this is where I feel accepted. This is where I feel this is the place I want to be. This is the floor. And yes, I want to amaze an audience, but not for the sense of ego, because I want to amaze the audience because later on we will have a party together and be a family. And this is where I found my way. And I agree with you. When I started my career, especially in consultancy, there were so many moments where I had this clear feeling I don't fit in here. This is totally different to everything that I'm feeling. But as a young consultant, you know, you're not in the position actually to maneuver your way around this. But I think that's also the reason why I ended up being in innovation, because innovation allows me to create the environment that I love to be in. And I can use the assets that we have and that I like, and work around those that I don't like and make it a future where people want to be in and don't have to make concessions. Yeah, so this is how I see the world today. I can tell you it took me some years. It took me some very good conversations with great friends, but I'm happy to say today, you know, the one that didn't fit in for decades is now in the position to create the future for families. May it be my team members, may it be my colleagues, may it be my partners, may it be my friends. And looking at it from that perspective, to me, it all makes sense.
I think this is a wonderful intake on how the personal and the professional are not in a war together, and that there's one that feeds into the other, and that goes in both directions. So it's cyclical. It's not a one-way communication. The professional always has to communicate to the personal, or the personal always has to communicate to the professional. But when the two dance together in a way, this is where 1 + 1 equals much more than 2, much more than a personal life that is in parallel, in tandem with a professional life. They actually create a higher life. They actually create a more balanced, a more holistic, a more personally relevant and contextually relevant life. And I think that is absolutely wonderful. And when the emotional side is embedded in the process, what happens almost all the time is a process of transformation. And different people would react to a different stimulus in completely different ways. When it comes to the emotional side of things, a marvelous way of communication, which can be considered as not normal or not standard, is the act of transformation of pain into power, the act of transformation of the negative into positive, of the ugly into something that can be beautiful, of what can be weighing on you into something that can liberate you. And by doing that, that can also liberate other people. And I completely relate to it. I've had my own share of experiences that are similar to yours, and we've discussed that in another conversation as well. And by living it, by accepting it, by living it, and by living up to it, it is possible to create something that is on a much higher level, on a level that is much more complete and that encompasses the person in their entirety. And I think this is something that we all want to strive towards, because we realize with everything that is so hectic around us, and all the noise, all the environment, all the feedback that comes from the external world, there is increasingly more pressure on individuals, on professionals, on artists, on dancers, on consultants, and so on and so forth. And perhaps what I would like perhaps to discuss here is how can we as individuals, with all that amount of pressure that is coming towards us, really use that as a springboard to create something new, to create something different. How is that possible from a dance perspective? And how is that possible from a digital transformation perspective? And perhaps both are going in the same direction as well.
So what I think, we dancers, we make a difference, which I think is very important. And I think sometimes we are missing this in the discussion that you already mentioned, when people feel that they have pressure in their roles. As a dancer, you make a strong difference between taking a role and your interpretation. And this is, I think, where's your magical power. And of course, in a business, we have roles. In my today's role, I'm a manager. I have to be a manager. I have to do all this administrative stuff for my employees. I'm an executive. I'm discussing with our CEO on the business we are doing and its future. And these are roles that I need to take. It's the same thing coming back to dancing. I'm a Latin American dancer in competitive environment. You're doing 5 different dances. Okay, so I'm taking 5 different roles. But again, what is my interpretation of that role? And most people know there's a dance called Paso Doble, and the man is doing the bullfighter. And this is just a role, but the interpretation of that role can be so different. It can be aggressive, it can be elegant, it can be gypsy style. It can be so different. And if you put the lady to it, it can be romantic, it can be a fight, it can be aggressive, it can be erotic, you know, and it's a question of interpretation. And I think I would love people to spend less time on talking about personal branding, but rather on thinking about, I am in this role today, what is my interpretation of it? My very personal interpretation, and then live up to it. And live up to it and bring it on stage. This is how you interpret your role as a manager, as a consultant, as a CEO, and what is your personal flavor? And I remember one of my dancing teachers, she said that sentence, she was a world champion back then, and she said, whenever I watch a couple, I need to have a taste in my mouth. It can be salt, it can be sour, it can be hot, it can be sweet. I don't care. Maybe I don't like that taste because it's not my personal favor. But the worst thing that can happen is that I smell water. And I think that's the same thing when we talk about being leaders. What's your taste? What is your interpretation of what you're doing? And accept the fact that there are people out there who will probably not like the taste. But everybody knows it's you. And I love the approach of being authentic in it and finding your own way, which of course also means trying out things. You know, that's what you do as a dancer as well. I'm a very tall guy, and I also tried, you know, to be the fast and quick and whatever mover on the floor. And simply it doesn't work with my body, you know, but I tried to do it. And it didn't work out because the smaller people, the smaller guys, they always outpaced me. And but what I can do is I can show lines, I can show pictures because I've got a huge reach for my arms and I've got long legs. And well, that's probably my way to go. This is using my assets to make a difference. And yes, of course, there are people out there who say, well, you're too tall for your lady. Yes, we anyway won the competition. So, and as long as people remember what I've been doing, and next time I come back, they remember me and they remember the feeling that I gave them. This is where I start making a difference. When I stop tasting like water and adding my own flavor to it. And I think this is also the way to get beyond this sort of pressure. Yes, there will always be stressful situations. There will always be times of having a huge workload. There will always be a time of making difficult decisions. But what is your interpretation of that role in that very moment? And going the way where you say, well, that's me, and this is how I do this role. I think that could be an answer. And also in my role as a mentor and coach for startups and for young professionals, that's what I try to get out of them, is what's your idea? What's your choreography? What's your taste that you want to give to an audience? And then have the courage to go out on the floor and show it. And be you. And I think that's a much more satisfying, enriching, and appeasing way than desperately trying to be someone where your inner self tells you all the time you're not. Yeah, that would basically my answer to that one.
That's true. Alignment creates a huge difference. When you feel aligned with yourself, the energy level skyrockets. Your ability to manage stress becomes magical. Your resilience becomes much more flexible and elastic, because you know that whatever happens in the world around you, no matter how tough things can get, no matter how disastrous the situation is, you have within you the resources, the power, the energy, the ideas, the creativity, all the things, all the tools that you can use your own way to create something that has value, or in your words, that has a taste. And that completely changes the interaction that we have with the external world. It's just when we find that alignment between who we are and what we do. And it's I feel that it's absolutely magical, and I'm sure that you feel the same way as well.
Absolutely. And I've always wondered, being a dancer, you know, everybody admires that moment when the magic happens. But when you tell people, well, you can do the same, there's always this awkward feeling of, do you really think I can do this?
Yeah.
And this is where we as leaders come into play and tell people, yes, you can. And it's not magic, you know. When I'm on stage and I'm showing dancing, sometimes I just get a lady up on stage and I'm just moving hands with her. I'm not doing one single step. And then I ask the audience, what do you think? And audience usually goes, wow, it was magic. And so, did you realize that I didn't make a step? I was just trying to build a connection with this woman, and she was so nice to accept it. And then we had a connection, and this is what you watched, and this is what you thought was magic. And we do connections the whole day, you know, with the people around us. And just by taking care of these connections and doing them intensively and intentionally, you know, brings so much magic to our life. And also in a business life, you know, every moment that I do with an employee is a signature experience where he or she can experience me as his or her boss, you know, taking care of her, giving her the feeling that he or she matters, and using this opportunity, I think really makes a difference. And of course, you know, being someone who lost people very early in his life, sometimes we take people for granted that are around us. And this is why we don't put enough effort in creating the connections and valuing them. And, you know, I also told my kids, you know, not to worry you or to make you frightened, but I've learned what it means if there's no chance anymore to say I love you to somebody. And and I know how it feels to have these moments when you are in a room and you would give literally anything to have this one opportunity. And what it taught me is, whenever I meet someone and I have that feeling, say it. I like what you do. I like you. You amazed me. You gave me a wonderful feeling. Saying it now, and not just, you know, once a year in your bonification process interview, but every day. You made me smile today, and I think that simply creates an environment where people feel treasured and feel respected, and people are giving it back to you in the same way. And in my experience, in my professional past, this is what made amazing teams. And even if we are not working together anymore, when we meet, it's always like, wow, you remember these days when we did that? And I think that sounds to me like a good sense for life. You know, create memories, create experiences that people remember, and remember with a smile.
That's the power of intensity, and all of the great things that have been built, designed, written, drawn in the past, they come from a place of intensity. Because if we live on autopilot, we have no way, we have no mean to do something that is meaningful. We're just on autopilot. An autopilot is not a creator, is not a designer, is not a person who has, or is not a system that allows you to kind of express all the things that need to be expressed.